So today I want to talk about how avoidant behavior and anxious behavior both falls into the people-pleasing category. And a lot of times we think about people pleasers as, the people who overgive and overfunction, and they are. But there's a reason why they're doing this. And there are some different ways that this shows up in relationships. So I want to unpack the subconscious reasons for this, but I also want to give you some clarity in understanding what's going on under the surface if you're with someone like that, or if you are someone like that, and that it can actually cost you a lot to not address those things. So I want to give you some actionable steps. If you're new here, I'm Ketra Thompson, and what I do with my clients is I combine a few different things. The custom deep hypnotherapy process with mind coaching and relationship coaching with attachment style focus so that people can get to the heart of the subconscious issues that are driving their unwanted behavior, reframe them, and then rebuild the way that they connect with themselves and the world around them. So if you'd like to learn more, you can check out the link in the description below, and you can set up a completely free complimentary consultation call where you and I can chat so that we can get to the heart of what's going on with you and I can make you my best recommendation. Now, if you have people-pleasing tendencies or you're with someone who does, what you're going to find is that people-pleaser mentality is actually both anxious and avoidant. They avoid conflict, and that creates some anxiety if they have to face those hard conversations and have conflict, because what it does is it keeps them in a place of thinking that they might be rejected. And they probably grew up in a home where maybe they didn't have a lot of nurturing and patience afforded to them. Even if they had good parents, even if they had loving parents, maybe they weren't hugged and coddled enough, or they weren't connected to very much. And so they never fully had their needs met. And they thought, well, as long as I behave, as long as I do and say the right things, then the people in my life will stay and they will not leave me feeling abandoned. But what I want you to realize is that at the heart of this behavior is not knowing your own feelings and not knowing your own needs, even if you have big feelings. So a lot of times, this kind of person will have really big emotions and feelings inside of themselves, but they'll be so detached from what any of it means that they either go to one extreme of totally numbing out and being disconnected from that, or they go into the other direction of letting the bigness of those feelings create a narrative and resentment inside of them because of what they assign those feelings to mean. And so the missing piece there is that they don't actually know what they need. They aren't able to tune into their feelings in any given moment and ask themselves, what would actually help me feel better right now? What am I actually craving and desiring? What do I actually need? And even if they think they know what they need, they don't ask for it. They expect the other people around them to read their mind, or they behave in passive-aggressive ways, or they kind of throw out these little jabs or comments where they're sort of saying what they want and what they need, but it's not in a way that they can be rejected. They're almost rejecting first, with it being sort of a comment that's maybe a little bit of a jab at the other person, a little bit rude. And so there's a lack of clear, calm, non-blaming communication. And they can't communicate their needs because they don't fully know what they need in that process. And they don't know how to express it, even if they think they do need it. So, for example, let's say someone really wanted to have more sex in their marriage, and they hinted about it, or they make jokes about it, or maybe they sometimes come out and say it, but it's in a sort of an aggressive way, a blaming way. It's not in a open way that is inviting dialogue and communication. It's not in a curious way of saying, hey, I miss you. I miss that connection. And I'm really wanting to know how we can fix that. Is there anything you need from me? Is there a way that we can better connect so that that part of our connection doesn't suffer? There isn't a real curiosity and openness, because the fear of the vulnerability of saying something and expressing that you are a human that actually has needs is very, very scary. And admitting that we have needs is like saying, I'm not perfect, and I'm going to allow you to see that I'm not perfect. And I want to really emphasize this point that programming is so flawed. Now, our subconscious mind is running over 95% of everything we think, feel, and do. So it's in control. But you programmed that subconscious mind from birth to age 7. And during that time, you're in the theta brainwave state. So you're in a hypnotic state. And so you're assigning meaning to all your life experiences and programming it. And then after the age of 7, there's some other ways that we can affect the way our subconscious works with big trauma and complex trauma and things that don't actually help it for the better, right? So what's going on during that time is we're thinking, how can I make myself acceptable to the people that I rely on, that I can't get away from? We can't get away from our parents. We can't create boundaries with our parents. We can't decide that we're just going to go somewhere else. We're stuck with them, with their good, with the bad, with the ugly. And so we develop these coping mechanisms that say, how can I behave in a way that makes me feel like I have some control over whether or not I get rejected by these people that I need so desperately. And then we carry that into our adult life, and we end up implementing it into our intimate relationships. Now, sometimes it comes out in friendships and work environments, but it's most prevalent in the intimate relationship, especially marriage, because that is the one person who is going to see your flaws. That is the one person who's going to see the good, bad, and the ugly. And it's very triggering to those unhealed wounds when you have to put yourself into a position of being seen as imperfect. And you can know in your head that, yeah, I don't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. We're all human. But knowing it inside of you, in that subconscious programming, is entirely different. And so that's why the work I do with my clients is so incredibly effective, is because we address that issue on the subconscious level. So you can tell someone, here's a better way to communicate. Here's how to approach it. Here's how to use I feel statements and not blame. And oftentimes they don't work because one or both people who are trying to communicate are emotionally triggered in the process, and the old beliefs and wounds come up to the surface, and now they're operating from a state of dysregulation and assumption and not from curiosity. So at the end of the day, there are differences between an anxious and an avoidant attachment style, but there's also a lot of similarities because they're both insecure attachment styles. And so an avoidant person will stay numbed out and disconnected from their feelings for a much longer period of time, knowing that if they allow that to open up and be expressive and be vulnerable of really, being open with the other person, then that person could hurt them. And the realization of knowing that that person could hurt them makes them anxious and makes them feel like I have to perform more and I have to make sure I check all the boxes and I people please and I jump through the hoops so I don't lose them. But if I don't love them fully to begin with, then I don't trigger that underlying anxiety. And the anxious attachment person is thinking that if I don't please them, if I don't be the version of who I think they want me to be, they're going to leave me. And so there's this pressing in and maybe even an oversharing sometimes of feelings and emotions because you're hoping that the other person's going to really get you and understand and reciprocate. And so they're both something that induces anxiety. And even in the anxious person, sometimes it can induce some avoidance because they know that they don't want to feel that way. And so when we've grown up in homes where we didn't have our needs met and we've had to bring, these belief systems into our adult life out of survival, it feels very, very scary to let go of it. And it plays out in several different ways. Sometimes the passive aggressive behavior becomes really emotionally abusive or destructive. And that is still stemming from someone's avoidance of vulnerability. They do not want to be vulnerable, so they pick fights to create distance between them and their partner so that they don't have to get close and they don't have to get vulnerable. And on the flip side of that, there's the person who's always reading the energy of the room. always trying to gauge what other people are feeling and thinking. And then they're very concerned about what the world thinks of them and how they're being judged. But it's because they are judging themselves very harshly. They are also judging the world, and they assume that everyone else is doing the same. And so it creates this dynamic that's really unhealthy. But it's not, I want to just say this, it's not like we're supposed to know this stuff. We are born into the family we're born into. We have the life experiences that we have. All we can do with that is learn and grow and shift and adjust. And hopefully we do without creating a negative narrative that just keeps us in this very limited way of seeing other people. We're supposed to fumble through some of this stuff, but at some point, we're supposed to be self-reflective enough to realize this isn't working. Something is not healthy about the way I function. And that's the moment when we really want to reach out and get help. And so when we're motivated to really make the change, knowing that this pattern isn't sustainable, is when you want to get some help. So the first step you can start doing on your own is recognize some patterns. Notice, what do I do repetitively? And even challenge those beliefs. Because if you create a mental dialogue about someone else in your brain that says, oh, they always do this and they always do that, and this justifies why I get to be a jerk to them. If there's a story like that, I'd like you to challenge it and try to look at the big picture of who that other person is and ask yourself, can I know for 100% certain that the other person feels the way I think they do, or believes the way I think they do, or did the thing they did because of why I think they did it? Because in reality, we cannot know for 100% certain. And so when we can let go of the control that we are trying to assert with the people around us in our lives, then we can actually start to be self-reflective for ourselves. We tune in. We go, okay, regardless of what they did or didn't do, regardless of what they meant or didn't mean, what do I feel? What's coming up in me? And what do I need? That's a huge question. What do I need? What would actually help me feel better in this moment? Because if we're regularly asking ourselves that, then we're going to have more awareness of how to actually meet those needs in real time in our life. But once we address the subconscious programming that's sort of pushing against that constantly, it does make the job a lot easier. And it gives you a lot more clarity. So tune into yourself, start being curious, start asking if you can know for 100% sure. And if you can start identifying your own needs, then you can step into communicating those needs differently. But if you're constantly getting triggered by your emotions when you go to try to communicate healthily, then you've got some subconscious programming that really needs to be reframed. And so those inner fears, they're telling you information that you want to be able to tune into. It's that fear of abandonment, the fear of rejection, the fear of embarrassment, the fear that I'm not enough. And in order to get to the heart of those things, really the subconscious work is the best and most rapid way to reframe that programming. So if you'd like to learn more, set up that consultation call so that you and I can chat. And in the meantime, start tuning into your feelings, and not just what the narrative your feelings are telling you, but what you actually can determine that you need in that moment. What do I need that would help me feel better, that would give me the support I need without blaming, but really tuning into you? And how self-compassionate are you with yourself? Because that's going to affect the way that you see the world and how you connect with the world. So I hope that helps. And as always, if this content resonates with you, I would love it if you would click like and subscribe so you could be notified every time I post a new video. And until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.